All right, let's move on to one of the other circuses down in Georgia. Another one of President Donald Trump's alleged co-conspirators in the RICO case down in Georgia, where Trump is accused of trying to go out and find me 11,000 votes and flip the election and will create some fake electors. His attorney, Jenna Ellis, pleaded guilty in rather dramatic fashion to a much lesser charge, which suggests that she's ready to cooperate at a trial. Let's play Jenna Ellis here speaking to the judge.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to address the court. As an attorney who is also a Christian, I take my responsibilities as a lawyer very seriously, and I endeavor to be a person of sound moral and ethical character in all of my dealings. In the wake of the 2020 presidential election, I believed that challenging the results on behalf of President Trump should be pursued in a just and legal way. I endeavored to represent my client to the best of my ability. I relied on others, including lawyers with many more years of experience than I, to provide me with true and reliable information, especially since my role involved speaking to the media and to legislators in various states. What I did not do, but should have done, Your Honor, was to make sure that the facts the other lawyers alleged to be true were in fact true. In the frenetic pace of attempting to raise challenges to the election in several states, including Georgia, I failed to do my due diligence. I believe in and I value election integrity. If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse.
If we can put up the next element, she's basically charged with aiding and abetting false statements and writings. Conditions of the plea agreement, according to NBC News, include the requirements she serve 5 years of probation. I hope that's unsupervised for her sake. I've been on supervised probation. It sucks. Pay $5,000 of restitution to the Georgia Secretary of State and testify at hearings or trials in the case.
I'm trying to move past that you were on supervised probation.
It sucked. I don't recommend it.
Noted.
They treat you like total garbage. You gotta take drug tests. It costs you money for the privilege.
Noted.
It's unpleasant.
That sounds unpleasant. Sometimes I just learn so much of you at unexpected times. But, you know, Jenna Ellis, so to Ryan's point, also required to complete 100 hours of community service and write an apology letter to the citizens of Georgia. She also agreed to provide any requested documents or evidence, not post about the case on social media, and not have any communication with any witnesses or the media until the case has been closed. Now, we do have another element that sort of looks back on, it sort of puts together, this is from, I think, the Republican Accountability Project, or Accountable GOP, something like that. It's their Twitter handle. They spliced together videos of Jenna Ellis from 2020 with Jenna Ellis just yesterday. Let's take a look at that.
Strike force team that is working on behalf of the president and the campaign to make sure that our Constitution is protected. We are a nation of rules. All of your fake news headlines are dancing around the merits of this case and are trying to delegitimize what we are doing here. Let me be very clear that our objective is to make sure to preserve and protect election integrity.
What is the point of all this?
Well, the point of this, of course, is to get to fair and accurate results because the election was stolen and President Trump won by a landslide. We know already that the election results in at least 5 of the swing states were irredeemably compromised. So we already have sufficient evidence for these states to decertify their electoral result. Your question is fundamentally flawed when you're asking where is the evidence. You clearly don't understand the legal process. What we have asked for in the court is to not have the certification of false results.
Right, I think it's actually easy to watch the clip of her yesterday and have sympathy, and I'm not saying that's entirely unwarranted. When I see that, I think good for Jenna Ellis. I actually wish a lot of people that have sort of come into Trump's orbit and been poisoned or just compromised in the frenzy of Republican politics in the last few years would come out and kind of explain how they got sucked into all of this and how seemingly reasonable people, I mean, a lot of folks who lived in New York City under Rudy Giuliani do not recognize. I mean, whatever people originally thought about him, they don't recognize the Rudy Giuliani that's become a close Trump ally from the Rudy Giuliani as when he was mayor of New York City, and wonder, how is it that people who are seemingly intelligent, reasonable, normal, successful people come out and say things like in that last clip, one that stuck out to me was Jenna Ellis saying President Trump won in a landslide. That I think it is almost impossible to understate, to emphasize how seriously it changed the country in 2020 and will have an effect on the country for years and years to come because the trust deficit there. People like Jenna Ellis were being told, and she played a huge role in this because she was on TV saying Donald Trump won in a landslide. And people around the country look at that and say, this is an attorney for the President of the United States who has information that must be pretty good because she's an attorney for the President of the United States that is telling her that he won in a landslide. That's exactly how you get people sacking the Capitol because they think that the election is being stolen, a landslide election is being stolen out from under their noses. And honestly, when they're being told that by an attorney for the president who is so confident she's saying it on television, that responsibility, I mean, she should be crying when she reflects on it because it is so tragic the way that people were misled by, and she's passing the buck to other attorneys, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, I don't know what the truth is to that, but she obviously feels badly for doing it, I guess. I mean, maybe those are crocodile tears, but man.
Seem pretty real.
And maybe she was getting bad information from, I don't doubt that someone was getting bad information from Sidney Powell or Rudy Giuliani in 2020. But even she is saying that she failed to do her due diligence, and that is for damn sure. Right,
and some of it is a little bit of hubris and youth in the sense that I think it's true that Trump had run through so many attorneys
100%.
that he's got an inexperienced young woman who's kind of easy to bully and push around by some of the more senior attorneys. But and maybe it's youth and hubris that doesn't allow her to ask the question of, I have so little experience.
Yeah.
What on earth am I doing in this incredibly pivotal role, advising a president of the United States who's trying to overturn an election?
Right.
Like, it's not my skills, background, genius that got me here. Nobody else would do this. And then to ask yourself, well, why would nobody else do this? A, because he doesn't pay them. B, because they looked at it and are like, the facts are not on your side here.
Yeah.
And one of the most wonderful things that the United States kind of has given to the world is the peaceful transfer of power. We've delivered a lot of pain to the world, but the transfer of power over thousands of years has been a place where so many people have died just for the pursuit of vanity and power by different factions, and to have developed for hundreds of years a way to transfer that power from one side to another, from one faction to another, without people dying, is an innovation that we just can't kind of allow to just slide away because one guy didn't like the results of the election that leads to that transfer of power. And so you try to undermine that, you come for the king and you miss, you're going to get a $5,000 fine to the Georgia Secretary of State.
And what she's doing there is not quibbling with the constitutionality of Pennsylvania's mail-in voting laws, right? She's saying Donald Trump won in a landslide, and Sidney Powell was out talking about Dominion voting machines. And by the way, while all of this is happening, Mark Zuckerberg is steering millions of dollars into a partisan electioneering project that people behind it actually told Time Magazine was like, they essentially, Molly Ball wrote a piece basically being like, this was a conspiracy, but it was a good one to, quote, rig the election. So while you're talking about Dominion voting machines and Donald Trump winning in a landslide, there are actual serious questions about money in politics and money in elections being raised, and nobody is talking about them anymore because Jenna Ellis was saying Donald Trump won in a landslide. Just really quickly before we get to Mark Meadows, I'll read Jonathan Turley. He said, Ellis is the type of plea that tends to concentrate the mind. And Turley has been generally favorable to Trump. He's George Washington University law professor, hardly like a creature of the conservative movement, but somebody who has kind of come to Trump's defense in some of these cases and talking about how they're lawfare. Powell pleaded to relatively minor charges. So she pleaded, as people remember last week, involving unauthorized access to voting machines in areas. Those charges tend to be easy to prove. It is not clear if she would tie Trump to a conspiracy or racketeering. Ellis pleaded guilty to false statements that could conceivably implicate the president if she claims that he was aware of the falsity and facilitated the crime. Moreover, Ellis recently broke with Trump. She called him a malignant narcissist who cannot admit mistakes and said she would never vote for him again. Meanwhile, we can put element 4, C4, up on the screen. Just yesterday, ABC News reported that Donald Trump's ex-chief of staff, as all of this was going down, Mark Meadows, was granted immunity and told the special counsel that he warned Donald Trump about 2020 election claims. Now, this report says Meadows, quote, repeatedly told Trump in the weeks after the 2020 election that allegations of significant voting fraud were baseless and that Trump had been, quote, dishonest with his quick claim of victory right after the polls closed. So to Turley's point about Ellis potentially implicating Donald Trump in this conspiracy that Fani Willis has charged him with, that is now a position Mark Meadows reportedly is in. I think the story has been questioned by people close to Meadows. I think they're saying that it's not necessarily true, but we'll see.
He's going to testify to it anyway.
That's the thing.
What are people saying is true?
How do you mean?
So you said that people close to Trump don't think Meadows' claim is true?
I think it's people close to Meadows have said this story is not necessarily accurate, and that could mean different things. The ABC
interesting.
report.
I see.
Yeah, and again, I remember when we were going through the RICO indictment out of Georgia, one of the unfortunate things about it is that a lot of the conspiracy charges against people like Jenna Ellis, it was obviously lawfare and was obviously ridiculous, but then there were kernels in that lawsuit. There were it was like 2 or 3 of them where Willis shows that people like Ellis, I don't remember if she was specifically one of them, but people in Trump's legal circle and Trump himself, there were a couple of instances where they were obviously spreading things they knew that were not true.
Right.
And if that had just been like the tight indictment instead of like conspiracy because they booked a conference room and whatever else, man, that would be really devastating. But maybe it's actually, maybe they did that intentionally to get people like Ellis to flip by just flooding the zone with different charges, and Meadows too.
Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.
Help us build independent news and get the full show every morning at breakingpoints.com.